The chandeliers cast prismatic light across the ballroom of the Westwood Hotel, where Seattle's elite mingled in their designer finery. 28-year-old Madeline Foster adjusted her simple black cocktail dress, the only formal attire she owned, and fought the urge to flee. As a sign language interpreter for the Seattle Children's Hospital Charity Gala, she didn't belong among these wealthy patrons, but she needed this freelance job desperately. Remember, just blend in and be available if needed, her agency coordinator had instructed. So far, no one had required her services, making Madeline feel increasingly invisible as she circulated through the crowd. That's when she spotted her. In the far corner of the ballroom, partially hidden behind a marble column, stood a teenage girl in a midnight blue dress. While everyone around her laughed and chatted animatedly, she remained silent, her eyes watchful and intelligent. Despite her designer gown and the diamond studs in her ears, something in her posture, the slight tension in her shoulders, the careful way she observed lips moving, was immediately recognizable to Madeline. The girl was deaf, and no one was talking to her. Madeline's attention shifted as a ripple of excitement surged through the crowd. Jackson Pierce, tech billionaire and the evening's honored guest, had arrived. His company, Pierce Innovations, had donated millions to the Children's Hospital's new pediatric wing. Cameras flashed as he entered, a tall man with salt and pepper hair and commanding presence. People gravitated toward him like moths to flame, eager to share his spotlight. "Mr. Pierce, over here," called photographers and reporters, while wealthy donors jostled to shake his hand. Madeline glanced back at the girl in blue, noticing how she watched her father. For who else could the famous Jackson Pierce be to her? With a mixture of pride and resignation. Not once did Pierce look in his daughter's direction, and not once did anyone approach her. Taking a deep breath, Madeline crossed the room. As she neared, the girl's eyes widened slightly in surprise at being directly approached. "Hello," Madeline signed, her hands forming the greeting with practiced ease. "I'm Madeline. What's your name?" The girl's face transformed. The careful mask of polite indifference fell away, replaced by a smile of such genuine delight that it made Madeline's heart ache. How long had it been since someone had communicated with this girl in her own language? "I'm Olivia," she signed back, her movements quick and elegant. "You know ASL? Are you deaf too?" "No," Madeline replied, her fingers dancing through the signs. "I'm an interpreter. I work at the Children's Hospital sometimes, the one my father donated to." Olivia nodded, a flicker of something complicated passing across her face. "I'm supposed to stand here and look pretty for the photos later." The bitterness in her expression told Madeline everything. Olivia was used to being a prop, not a participant. "Well, until then," Madeline signed, "would you like some company that actually talks to you?" Olivia's laugh was silent but expressive. "God, yes. I've been watching people's lips all night until my eyes hurt. Do you know how many people here have asked me if I can read their lips? And then they exaggerate everything like I'm 5 years old." Madeline smiled, knowing exactly what she meant. "Or they shout, because apparently being deaf also means you're stupid." "Exactly," Olivia signed, her movements becoming animated. "Or my personal favorite, when they find out I'm deaf, they immediately start talking to whoever's with me instead, as if I've suddenly become invisible." As they conversed, Madeline noticed how Olivia's shoulders relaxed, how her eyes brightened. The girl was smart, wickedly funny, and starved for real conversation. "I'm in my senior year," Olivia explained when Madeline asked about school. "I go to Westridge Academy. It's mainstream, but they have a deaf program." "Do you have many friends there?" Madeline asked. Olivia's hands hesitated. "Not really. The hearing kids think I'm stuck up because I'm Pierce's daughter, and the deaf kids think I'm privileged and don't understand their struggles." "That sounds lonely," Madeline replied honestly. "It is what it is." Olivia signed with a shrug that didn't quite hide her pain. "At least I have my art. I paint. Actually, I'm pretty good at it. I'd love to see your work sometime," Madeline told her. Across the room, Jackson Pierce was working the crowd with practiced charm, seemingly unaware of his daughter's existence. Madeline couldn't help but notice how Olivia's eyes occasionally drifted toward him, a mixture of longing and resentment in her gaze. "Your father seems very busy tonight," Madeline commented carefully. Olivia's smile turned bitter. "He's always busy. Pierce Innovations doesn't run itself, you know. Her signing took on a mocking quality, clearly repeating words she'd seen many times. He's built quite an empire since my mother died. I'm very proud of him. The rehearsed nature of the statement was heartbreaking. When did your mother pass away? Madeline asked gently. When I was 7. That's when everything changed. Olivia's hands slowed. Before that, our house was full of music, which is ironic, I know. My mother was a concert pianist. She made sure I experienced music in my own way, through vibrations, through the way her face looked when she played. After she died, the music stopped. Dad buried himself in work, and I became the problem to solve. The problem? The deaf daughter. The specialists, the surgeries, the therapies. He wanted to fix me. Olivia's signs became sharp, angular. He never learned to sign. Not a single word. We have interpreters at home, rotating faces I barely know. He talks to them, not me. In his own house, he talks to strangers about me while I'm sitting right there. Madeline felt a surge of anger toward Jackson Pierce. How could someone so successful, so wealthy, fail so fundamentally at communicating with his own child? I'm sorry, she signed simply. Olivia shrugged again. Like I said, it is what it is. She glanced over Madeline's shoulder, and her expression changed. Speak of the devil. Madeline turned to see Jackson Pierce approaching, accompanied by a photographer, and what appeared to be his assistant, a sharp-looking woman in her 40s with a tablet in hand. Olivia, Pierce said, his lips easy to read as he spoke loudly and deliberately. We need you for photos. He didn't look at Madeline, didn't acknowledge her presence at all. The assistant smiled tightly and gestured for Olivia to come. Olivia's face smoothed into the same polite mask she'd worn earlier. Before following her father, she quickly signed to Madeline. See what I mean? He doesn't even wonder who you are or why you're talking to me. As Olivia walked away to stand beside her father for the photographers, Madeline felt a strange sense of determination taking root. In her work at the hospital, she'd seen countless children isolated by their deafness, but never someone so completely alone while surrounded by so much privilege. The evening continued, and Madeline watched as Olivia stood dutifully for photos, nodded at appropriate moments, and maintained her perfect practiced smile. Not once did Pierce or anyone else attempt to include her in the conversations swirling around her. When the formal part of the evening concluded, Madeline saw Olivia slip away from the crowd, heading toward a side door that appeared to lead to a garden terrace. Making a split-second decision, Madeline followed. Outside, the Seattle night was cool and clear, the garden terrace illuminated by subtle landscape lighting. Olivia stood at the stone balustrade, looking out over the city lights below. Escaping. Madeline signed as she approached. Olivia turned, and the relief on her face was palpable. Just breathing. Sometimes I need to step away from all those moving lips. Before Madeline could respond, the terrace door opened again. Jackson Pierce stepped out, his expression shifting from concern to confusion when he saw his daughter wasn't alone. Olivia, it's time to go, he said, looking directly at his daughter but making no effort to sign. Madeline saw Olivia's face fall, saw the wall go up between father and daughter, and in that moment, she made a decision that would change all their lives. Mr. Pierce, she said aloud, while simultaneously signing for Olivia's benefit, my name is Madeline Foster. I'm an interpreter, and I've been talking with your daughter. She's extraordinary. Pierce blinked, clearly taken aback by this direct approach from someone he likely viewed as service staff. Thank you. Do you work for the event? Yes, Madeline replied, still signing her words. But right now I'm just someone who thinks you should know what you're missing by not being able to communicate with Olivia directly. The billionaire's expression hardened, but Madeline saw something else there too, a flicker of shame quickly masked. Olivia's eyes were wide. Her hands frozen in midair. Jackson Pierce's jaw tightened. Miss Foster, Madeline supplied, continuing to sign every word. Miss Foster, he repeated, I appreciate your concern, but my relationship with my daughter is a private matter. Madeline felt her professional demeanor slipping. With all due respect, Mr. Pierce, communication shouldn't be private. It should be accessible. Olivia's hands moved rapidly. Madeline, it's okay. You don't have to. No, it's not okay. Madeline signed back before addressing Pierce again. Your daughter was standing alone all evening while everyone celebrated your generosity. Do you see the irony in that? A flash of genuine hurt crossed Pierce's face before his business mask slipped back into place. You've overstepped, Miss Foster. Olivia, we're leaving. He turned and walked back toward the ballroom, clearly expecting his daughter to follow. Olivia hesitated, her eyes locked with Madeline's. I'm sorry, Olivia signed quickly. He gets defensive about this. It's been this way since the accident. Accident? Madeline asked, but Olivia was already moving away. Find me at Westridge Academy, Olivia signed before disappearing through the door. Madeline stood alone on the terrace, heart pounding. She'd jeopardized her professional reputation by confronting a powerful client. Worse, she might have made things harder for Olivia. The next morning, Madeline woke to a voicemail from her agency coordinator. Madeline, call me back immediately. There's been a complaint about your conduct at the gala last night. Her stomach dropped. This was exactly what she'd feared. With her apartment rent already 2 weeks overdue and student loans piling up, she couldn't afford to lose clients. She'd left a stable position at Seattle Public Schools 6 months ago when budget cuts eliminated her role, and freelance work had proven far less reliable than she'd hoped. She returned the call with trembling fingers, prepared for the worst. I can explain, Madeline began when her coordinator answered. You certainly will explain, came the terse reply. Jackson Pierce's office called this morning. They've requested you specifically for a private appointment at his home this afternoon. Madeline nearly dropped her phone. They what? I have no idea what happened last night, but somehow you've caught the attention of one of the most influential men in Seattle. This could be huge for the agency, Madeline. Don't mess it up. 3 hours later, Madeline found herself driving through the imposing gates of the Pierce estate in Medina, overlooking Lake Washington. The modernist glass and stone mansion reflected the gray Seattle sky, austere and beautiful against the backdrop of perfectly manicured grounds. A housekeeper met her at the door. Mr. Pierce is waiting in his office. This way, please. Madeline followed through halls, adorned with museum-quality art. She noticed a striking abstract painting featuring bold sweeps of cobalt and gold that seemed out of place among the more traditional pieces. Olivia's. To work, the housekeeper commented, noticing Madeline's interest. She's quite talented. Before Madeline could respond, they arrived at Pierce's office, a spacious room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake. Jackson Pierce stood as they entered, dismissing the housekeeper with a nod. Miss Foster, thank you for coming. His tone was coolly professional. Please sit. Madeline took the offered chair, preparing herself for a formal reprimand or even a request to sign an NDA about his daughter's condition. I owe you an apology, Pierce said instead, surprising her completely. I beg your pardon. Your words last night. He paused, clearly uncomfortable. They were inappropriate in that setting, but not inaccurate. It's been brought to my attention that I've failed my daughter in significant ways. The vulnerability in his admission caught Madeline off guard. Sir, I apologize for speaking so bluntly. It wasn't my place. Perhaps it was exactly your place, Pierce replied, moving to sit behind his desk. You're the professional, after all. That's why I've asked you here today. He placed his hands flat on the desk surface, a businessman organizing his thoughts. Olivia lost her hearing in the same car accident that took her mother. She was 7. The doctors said it was nerve damage, permanent, irreversible. I spent the first 2 years after the accident consulting specialists around the world, pursuing every treatment option, trying to fix her, Madeline said softly. Remembering Olivia's words, Pierce winced. Yes, I couldn't accept that my daughter would never hear again. By the time I finally did accept it, a pattern had been established. Interpreters, specialists, tutors, people I paid to communicate with her so I wouldn't have to face my own inadequacy. He reached for a framed photograph on his desk, turning it so Madeline could see. A younger Pierce stood with a beautiful woman and a small beaming child, Olivia, before the accident. Catherine, my wife, started teaching Olivia sign language when she was an infant. Baby sign, they called it. Catherine believed in communication in all its forms. She was a concert pianist, but she always said music was just one language among many. Olivia mentioned her mother was a pianist, Madeline said. Pierce looked up sharply. She talked about Catherine. Briefly, she said your house was once full of music. He set the photograph down carefully, as though it might shatter. It was. After the accident, I couldn't bear to hear it anymore. I sold Catherine's piano, stopped playing the records she loved. I thought I was protecting Olivia from painful reminders, but perhaps I was only protecting myself. Madeline watched as emotions played across his face. Grief, regret, a desire to make things right. Despite her initial anger toward him, she felt her perspective shifting. "Mr. Pierce, why exactly am I here today?" He straightened, businessman mode re-engaging. "I want to hire you, Miss Foster. Not through your agency, but directly. A personal contract? To interpret for Olivia." "No," he said firmly. "To teach me to sign. I should have learned years ago. I want to communicate with my daughter directly, without intermediaries." Madeline sat back, genuinely surprised. "That's commendable, Mr. Pierce, but learning ASL takes time and consistent practice. It's not something you can accomplish in a few sessions. I'm aware. I'm prepared to commit to regular lessons over the next year, at minimum. Twice weekly more if my schedule allows." He named a figure for her compensation that made Madeline's eyes widen. "Would that arrangement interest you?" It would solve her financial problems overnight. But money wasn't her primary concern. "Before I answer, may I ask why now? What changed?" Pierce's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Last night I watched my daughter's face when you spoke to her in sign. I realized I haven't seen her look that alive in years. Then this morning she left this on my desk." He handed Madeline a folded piece of paper. Inside was a handwritten note. "Dad, I know you're angry about what happened with the interpreter last night, but for 10 minutes someone saw me, not Pierce's deaf daughter. If you really want to honor Mom's memory with your hospital donations, remember what she always said. True healing begins with being heard. I haven't been heard in a long time." Olivia Madeline carefully refolded the note, her throat tight with emotion. "I've spent years throwing money at my daughter's deafness," Pierce said quietly, "building deaf education wings, funding research, donating to organizations, all while failing to make the one investment that truly mattered." "It's not too late," Madeline said. "Olivia is still young. She leaves for college next year. Harvard has already accepted her early decision." Pride flickered across his face. "I have a limited window to repair what I've broken." Madeline considered her response carefully. "Mr. Pierce, I'd be happy to teach you ASL, but I need to be clear about something. This won't be a quick fix. Learning to sign is one thing. Rebuilding your relationship with Olivia is another." "I understand," he rose from his desk. "I'm prepared to do whatever it takes. Now there's someone else who would like to speak with you." As if on cue, the office door opened and Olivia entered. Seeing Madeline, she broke into a genuine smile. "You came," she signed. "Your father invited me," Madeline replied in sign. Olivia's eyes darted between Madeline and her father, confusion evident. "Why?" Pierce cleared his throat awkwardly. "I'll let Miss Foster explain. I have a conference call in 5 minutes." He paused at the door, looking back at his daughter. "Olivia, we'll talk later." After he left, Olivia's hands moved rapidly. "What's happening? Am I in trouble for what happened last night?" "Are you?" "Neither of us is in trouble," Madeline assured her. "Your father has hired me to teach him ASL." Olivia's hands froze mid-sign, her expression one of complete disbelief. "My father? Learning to sign?" "You're joking." "I'm not." "He seems very determined." Olivia sank into the chair her father had vacated, her face a complex mixture of hope and skepticism. "He won't stick with it. He never does with anything involving my deafness." "Maybe this time will be different," Madeline suggested gently. "Why would it be?" Olivia's signs were sharp, revealing years of disappointment. "Because this time he's not trying to fix you. He's trying to fix himself." 3 weeks later, Madeline sat across from Jackson Pierce in his home study, watching him struggle through fingerspelling. MEETINGATTHREE, his fingers laboriously formed each letter. "Good," Madeline signed and spoke simultaneously, her standard teaching method. "But remember, there's a specific sign for meeting that would be faster than spelling it out." Pierce frowned in concentration as he attempted the sign, his frustration evident when his fingers wouldn't cooperate. "This is impossible," he muttered, dropping his hands. "I'm too old to learn a new language." "You learned Mandarin for business deals," Madeline reminded him, having learned about his linguistic accomplishments during their sessions. "That was different. I was younger and it was—" He trailed off, aware of the implication. More important, Madeline supplied, keeping her tone neutral. Pierce had the grace to look ashamed. I was going to say easier, but you're right to call me out. Over these weeks, Madeline had discovered that beneath his imposing exterior, Jackson Pierce was a complex man, brilliant in business but emotionally stunted by grief, capable of tremendous focus yet blind to what was right in front of him. Let's try a different approach, Madeline suggested. Instead of business vocabulary, let's practice something you might actually want to say to Olivia. Pierce looked uncomfortable. Such as, "How about I'm proud of you?" That's something every child needs to hear. Something flickered across his face. Does she think I'm not proud of her? Madeline chose her words carefully. Mr. Pierce, when was the last time you told her so directly? He didn't answer, which was answer enough. Let me show you, she said, demonstrating the sign. I'm proud of you. Pierce watched intently, then mimicked her movements with surprising grace. For all his complaints, he was actually progressing faster than most adult learners. Perfect, Madeline encouraged. Now try I love you. The simple hand sign, pinky, index finger, and thumb extended, seemed to overwhelm him. After attempting it, he abruptly stood and walked to the window. Mr. Pierce, I haven't said those words to Olivia since Catherine died, he admitted, his back to Madeline. Not aloud and certainly not in sign. Why not? He turned, his composure slipping. Because every time I look at her, I see Catherine. I see what we lost. What I failed to protect. Understanding dawned on Madeline. The accident. You were driving? Pierce nodded once sharply. Black ice. A truck jackknifed ahead of us. I swerved to avoid it, but we hit the guardrail instead. His voice became clinical, detached. Catherine died instantly. Olivia was in the back seat. The impact caused trauma to her auditory nerves. When she woke up in the hospital, she couldn't hear anything. That wasn't your fault, Madeline said gently. Tell that to my 7-year-old daughter, who woke up in a silent world without her mother. Bitterness edged his words. For months after, she would scream at night. Horrible, raw sounds. She couldn't hear herself. I couldn't comfort her. The only thing that calmed her was drawing. She'd draw for hours, these chaotic, dark pictures that her therapist said expressed her trauma. And now she's an artist, Madeline observed. A talented one, Pierce agreed, a hint of pride breaking through. She's been accepted to Harvard's visual arts program. Catherine would have been... His voice caught. Catherine would have been so proud. The lesson continued, but Madeline's mind kept returning to what Pierce had revealed. The accident explained so much about their broken relationship, his guilt, his emotional withdrawal, his desperate attempts to fix Olivia's deafness while avoiding the deeper wound between them. Later that afternoon, Madeline met Olivia at a coffee shop near Westridge Academy. These meetings had become regular occurrences, initially focused on discussing Pierce's progress with ASL, but evolving into genuine friendship. So Olivia signed after they settled with their drinks, "How's my father doing?" "Still terrible." "Actually, he's improving," Madeline replied truthfully. "He's more dedicated than you might think." Olivia rolled her eyes. "He approaches everything like a business acquisition. Study it, master it, move on to the next challenge. Is that so bad if it means he's learning to communicate with you?" "I'll believe it when I see it," Olivia signed, but Madeline noticed the hope hiding behind her skepticism. "He told me about the accident today," Madeline revealed carefully. Olivia's hands stilled. "He never talks about that. I think he carries a lot of guilt." "He should," Olivia signed, her movements suddenly sharp. "Not for the accident, that wasn't his fault, but for what came after, for disappearing when I needed him most." "What do you mean?" Olivia sighed, her fingers dancing through a complex series of signs that revealed more emotion than her carefully controlled face. "After Mom died, Dad sent me to specialized boarding schools for the deaf. He visited on designated parents' weekends, always with an interpreter. We became strangers to each other. When I finally came home for good at 15, it was like moving in with a polite acquaintance. Not my father." Madeline felt her heart ache for both Pierces, a father and daughter separated not just by deafness, but by shared grief they couldn't express to each other. "You never told me why you left your school job," Olivia signed, clearly wanting to change the subject. Madeline hesitated before answering honestly. "Budget cuts were the official reason, but the truth is, I was becoming too personally involved with the deaf students. My supervisor said I needed better professional boundaries. Olivia's expression was curious. What does that mean? It means I did things like drive deaf kids home when their parents forgot them, or advocate too aggressively for resources the school claimed they couldn't afford. Madeline shrugged. Maybe they were right. I've never been good at emotional distance. Is that why you confronted my father at the gala? Probably, Madeline admitted. It wasn't very professional. It was exactly what I needed, Olivia countered. Even if nothing changes with my father, you saw me. That matters. Their conversation shifted to Olivia's art portfolio and her upcoming senior showcase. As they talked, Madeline couldn't help noticing how Olivia lit up when discussing her work. The same passionate intensity she'd glimpsed in Pierce when he spoke about his company. You should come to my showcase next Friday, Olivia signed. It's at the school gallery. I'd love to, Madeline replied. Will your father be there? Olivia's expression clouded. He's been invited. He always makes an appearance at school events. Donations to make, hands to shake. You know the drill. But he doesn't really see your art, Madeline guessed. He sees it as a hobby, not a calling, Olivia signed. He thinks Harvard's business school would be more practical than the visual arts program. Have you told him how important art is to you? How? We barely communicate about what time dinner is served. You could show him, Madeline suggested. Your art speaks volumes, Olivia. Maybe it could bridge the gap words haven't. The following Friday, Madeline arrived at Westridge Academy's gallery 30 minutes before the showcase was scheduled to begin. The space was already buzzing with activity as students made final adjustments to their displays. Olivia spotted her immediately and waved her over to a stunning collection of canvases dominating the gallery's center wall. Madeline's breath caught as she took in the series, abstract compositions that somehow conveyed profound emotion through color and movement. Olivia, these are incredible, she signed truthfully. The centerpiece was particularly arresting, a large canvas divided into two sections. The left side depicted chaotic darkness, slashed with red and black, while the right side showed a gradual emergence of blues and golds, a sense of order evolving from chaos. The title card read simply, After Silence. It's about the accident, Olivia signed, watching Madeline's reaction carefully. The moment everything changed, Madeline noticed something she hadn't seen initially. Embedded in the chaotic section were barely discernible words painted in various scripts, while the ordered side contained what appeared to be hands-forming sign language. The words are things I remember hearing before I lost my hearing, Olivia explained. My mother's voice, music, laughter. The signs of the new language I had to learn. Before Madeline could respond, a murmur passed through the gallery. Jackson Pierce had arrived, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his presence commanding immediate attention. The school's headmaster hurried to greet him, leading him on what appeared to be a predetermined tour of selected student works. Olivia's face fell slightly. See? Always the benefactor, never the father. But as the headmaster attempted to guide Pierce toward a different section, something unexpected happened. Pierce stopped, said something that made the headmaster look surprised, and then walked directly toward Olivia's display. Your father is coming this way, Madeline signed quickly. Olivia straightened, her expression guarded as Pierce approached. She didn't see what Madeline did, the way Pierce's eyes widened as he truly looked at her artwork, the flash of recognition when he read the title, After Silence. What happened next stunned them both. In full view of the gathering crowd, Jackson Pierce raised his hands and slowly, deliberately signed, These are beautiful. So I'm proud of you. Olivia's shock was visible, her hands frozen at her sides. For a moment, Madeline feared she wouldn't respond. Then, with trembling fingers, Olivia signed back. Thank you. It was a small exchange, painfully basic compared to the complex thoughts both clearly wanted to express. But in that moment, as father and daughter looked at each other with unguarded emotion for perhaps the first time in a decade, Madeline understood that something fundamental had shifted. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that this moment of connection would be shattered before the night was over, by a revelation that would force both Pierces to confront the true reason for their years of estrangement. The showcase continued, with Olivia reluctantly pulled away by her art teacher to speak with other attendees. Jackson Pierce remained in front of her paintings, studying each one with an intensity that surprised Madeline. "You didn't tell me she was this talented," he said when Madeline approached. "I did, actually," Madeline replied. "You just weren't ready to hear it." He acknowledged this with a slight nod. "These aren't just good for a high school student. They're extraordinary by any standard." He gestured to After Silence. "This one especially. It's raw, honest." "She's been trying to tell you things through her art for years," Madeline said gently. "It's been her voice when she felt you couldn't hear her." Pierce's eyes remained fixed on the painting. "I've been a fool, haven't I?" Before Madeline could respond, the gallery lights dimmed slightly, signaling the formal start of the showcase. The headmaster took center stage, welcoming everyone and thanking the evening's special guests, particularly Mr. Pierce, whose generous contributions to the school's arts program had made events like this possible. "And now," the headmaster continued, "it is my great pleasure to announce this year's recipient of the Catherine Pierce Memorial Scholarship for Excellence in Visual Arts." Madeline saw Olivia freeze across the room. This was clearly unexpected. This scholarship, established 5 years ago by Mr. Jackson Pierce in honor of his late wife, provides a full year of advanced study at the Paris Institute of Fine Arts following graduation. The crowd murmured appreciatively. Such an opportunity was extraordinary and expensive. This year's recipient has demonstrated remarkable talent, emotional depth, and technical skill beyond her years. Ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to announce that the scholarship goes to Miss Olivia Pierce. Applause erupted. Olivia stood motionless, her expression a complex mixture of shock, confusion, and something that looked almost like anger. All eyes turned to her, waiting for her to approach the podium. Instead, she turned and walked quickly out of the gallery. The headmaster faltered, looking uncertainly at Pierce. After an awkward moment, Pierce stepped forward. "Thank you for your patience," he addressed the crowd smoothly. "My daughter is understandably overwhelmed. If you'll excuse me." He followed Olivia's path out of the gallery, leaving confused whispers in his wake. Madeline hesitated only a moment before going after them both. She found them in an empty classroom down the hall. Olivia's hands were flying in rapid, furious signs that Madeline knew Pierce couldn't possibly follow at his beginner's level. "How could you?" Olivia was signing. "Using Mom's name like that without even telling me. Making decisions about my future without asking me." Pierce looked helplessly at Madeline when she entered. "I can't understand her when she signs that fast." Madeline stepped forward. "She's upset that you created a scholarship in her mother's name without discussing it with her, and that you're making decisions about her future without her input." Pierce's expression hardened. "I thought she'd be pleased. This is a prestigious opportunity. I don't want to go to Paris." Olivia signed vehemently, with Madeline translating aloud. "I've been accepted at Harvard. I've planned for this for years. And you just decide, without asking me, that I should spend a year in Paris instead. Harvard will still be there after—" "That's not the point." Olivia's signs were so forceful, they seemed to cut the air. "You've done this my entire life, decided what's best for me without ever asking what I want. I'm your father. It's my job to what? Control me? Ship me off whenever it's convenient? First all those boarding schools and now Paris." Pierce flinched as if struck. "Those schools were to give you the best education possible for your situation." "My situation?" Olivia's eyes flashed. "You mean my deafness? Or the fact that you couldn't bear to look at me after Mom died?" The raw accusation hung in the air between them. "That's not true," Pierce said, his voice hollow, "isn't it?" Olivia's hands trembled as she signed. "You sent me away for 9 years, Dad, 9 years. You visited on parent weekends with your interpreters and your forced smiles, and then you'd disappear again. Do you know what that felt like? To be 7 years old, suddenly deaf, my mother dead, and then abandoned by my father too." Madeline translated faithfully, her heart aching for them both. "I was trying to protect you," Pierce said, his composure cracking. "I thought those specialized schools would give you what I couldn't. What couldn't you give me?" Olivia demanded through Madeline's translation. "Understanding?" Pierce's control finally broke. "I couldn't understand what you were going through, Olivia. I couldn't help you. Every time you'd try to tell me something and I couldn't understand. Every time you'd cry and I couldn't comfort you. It was like losing you all over again." His words hung in the silence, raw with a decade of suppressed emotion. So instead of learning how to talk to me, Olivia signed more slowly now, you sent me away and threw money at the problem. Pierce didn't respond immediately. When he did, his voice was quiet. I know how it looks. But Olivia, I didn't send you away because I didn't want you. I sent you away because I was terrified of failing you worse by keeping you with me. Worse than abandonment. I was broken after your mother died, Pierce admitted, drowning in guilt, barely functioning. I convinced myself you'd be better off with professionals who understood deafness, who could give you a community I couldn't. I needed my father, Olivia signed, tears now streaming down her face. Not community, not specialists. Just you. Pierce moved toward her, then stopped, uncertainty in every line of his body. I didn't know how to be what you needed. You didn't try, Olivia signed, but her anger was ebbing, replaced by old grief. You're right, Pierce admitted. I took the coward's way out. And then, when you were finally home, we were strangers to each other. I didn't know how to bridge that gap. Olivia studied her father's face. Is that why you're learning to sign now? To bridge the gap? Yes, he answered simply. A long silence stretched between them, filled with a decade of misunderstandings and missed connections. Finally, Olivia signed, the scholarship. Did you really create it for Mum? Pierce nodded. She always believed art could heal wounds nothing else could touch. She would have been so proud of your talent, Olivia. But why Paris? Why now? Pierce looked at the floor, then back at his daughter. Because I saw your Harvard acceptance letter. Because I realized you'd be leaving soon, and I'd missed so much already. Because, he hesitated, then continued with painful honesty. Because part of me thought if you were in Paris instead of Cambridge, I'd have another year to learn how to talk to you before you were gone. The admission hung in the air. Stunning in its vulnerability, Olivia's expression softened slightly. Dad, I wasn't planning to disappear from your life after high school, weren't you? He asked quietly. I wouldn't have blamed you. Madeline watched as understanding passed between father and daughter, perhaps the first real understanding they'd shared in years. I don't want to go to Paris, Olivia signed again, but gently now. Harvard has been my dream, Pierce nodded slowly. Then Harvard it is. The scholarship can go to another student. But, Olivia continued, maybe we could go to Paris together sometime. Mom always wanted to take me there. Pierce's eyes widened in surprise, then filled with emotion he couldn't quite contain. I'd like that very much. Hesitantly, he raised his hands and signed, slowly but correctly, I'm sorry I failed you. I love you, Olivia. Tears spilled down Olivia's cheeks as she watched her father's hands form the words she'd waited so long to see. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him in a fierce embrace. Pierce held her tightly, his own eyes closed against tears. Over Olivia's shoulder, he mouthed thank you to Madeline. Madeline slipped quietly from the room, giving father and daughter the privacy they deserved. As she walked back toward the gallery, she felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing she had played a small part in healing a wound that had festered for too long. 6 months later, Madeline sat in the audience at Westridge Academy's graduation ceremony. As valedictorian, Olivia delivered her address in sign language, with a professional interpreter voicing her words for the hearing audience. From her seat, Madeline could see Jackson Pierce in the front row, watching his daughter with undisguised pride. Olivia's speech was eloquent and moving, touching on themes of communication, connection, and the courage to bridge divides. But it was her closing words that brought tears to Madeline's eyes. In a world that often values only what can be heard, Olivia signed, I've learned that the most important conversations happen in silence, in the space between words, in art, in gestures of love that transcend language. My journey from silence to expression wouldn't have been possible without two people. My mother, who taught me that music exists even for those who can't hear it, and my father, who learned that love doesn't always need sound to be understood. After the ceremony, amid the crowd of celebrating families, Madeline found herself face to face with both Pierces. We have something to show you, Olivia signed excitedly. She nodded to her father, who pulled out his phone and opened a photo gallery. The images showed a spacious studio filled with natural light, art supplies, and several easels. We've converted the East Wing sunroom into Olivia's studio, Pierce explained. She'll use it when she's home from Harvard. It's beautiful, Madeline said sincerely. And that's not all, Olivia signed. Tell her, Dad. Pierce smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his usually serious face. I've established a foundation in Catherine's name, the Pierce Foundation for Deaf Education and the Arts. We'll be funding art therapy programs, sign language education, and scholarships for deaf students. And, Olivia added proudly, all foundation staff will be required to learn ASL, no exceptions. That's wonderful, Madeline said. Both of you must be very proud. We are, Pierce replied, his hands forming the sign simultaneously with his words, still basic but much more fluid than before. And we'd like you to be part of it, Madeline. As our program director, if you're interested. Madeline stared at them in shock. Program director? Me? Who better? Olivia signed. You're the one who taught us that communication isn't just about words. It's about actually seeing each other. Madeline looked between them. The brilliant, resilient young artist and the powerful businessman who had finally learned the most important language of all, and knew her answer immediately. I'd be honored, she said, signing and speaking the words that would begin the next chapter for all of them.